Welcome to worship at Middleton Community United Church of Christ, where we say that no matter who you are or where you are on life's journey, you are welcome here.
We have 3 readings from Exodus for our scripture. The Lord went in front of them in a pillar of cloud by day to lead them along the way, and in a pillar of fire by night to give them light so that they might travel by day and by night. That was Exodus 13:21. Now we are Exodus 14:19 through 25. The angel of God who was going before the Israelite army moved and went behind them, and the pillar of cloud moved from in front of them and took its place behind them. It came between the army of Egypt and the army of Israel. And so the cloud was there with the darkness, and it lit up the night. One did not come near the other all night. Then Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. The Lord drove the sea back by a strong east wind all night and turned the sea into dry land, and the waters were divided. The Israelites went into the sea on dry ground, and the waters forming a wall for them on their right and on their left. The Egyptians pursued and went into the sea after them, all of Pharaoh's horses, chariots, and chariot drivers. At the morning watch, the Lord in the pillar of fire and cloud looked down upon the Egyptian army and threw the Egyptian army into panic. And then Exodus 15:20 and 21. Then the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Here ends our scripture readings. May we be blessed with new understanding.
Today's scripture passages are the foundational story of our faith, of Judaism and of Christianity. The ancient story in the book of Exodus, and we heard portions of that just now, are the whole reason why we're here today. It's a story of how God heard the cries of a people who were suffering and reached into human history to deliver them from that suffering and to take them to a good and broad land, a land, we're told, flowing with milk and honey, a land of promise, of freedom, of security for them and for their families. Why? So that they and their descendants, all of us, could continue that great mission to be a blessing to all the families of the earth. Figuring prominently in the story is evidence, and Emily said it well, of God's protection and of God's guidance, made known in a cloud by day and a fire by night, as their journey moved towards that land of promise. Somehow, with Pharaoh's army chasing down upon them, they miraculously escape. They make it to the edge of a body of water, whether it is the Sea of Reeds or the Red Sea, depending on how you translate the Hebrew, and by God's providence, they get through that obstacle. This is a painting by one of my favorite contemporary artists, John August Swanson, who painted many different stories from the Bible. And what I've liked about his work is that it's colorful, it's imaginative, and it's even playful. This one is a literal interpretation of the text that Moses stretched out his hand over the sea. And it's fun even to see the children dipping buckets into the wall of water. They've been thirsty on a long desert journey, right? And even the animals who are there are taking a drink. They safely cross to the other side, and then Pharaoh's army gets bogged down as the waters close over them. As the story continues, we read, and we've heard this before the sermon, that the prophet Miriam, Aaron's sister, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women went out after her with tambourines and with dancing. And Miriam sang to them, "Sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Horse and rider he has thrown into the sea." Now, some scholars think that this passage from Exodus 15, named the Song of Miriam, is probably the oldest scripture in the entire Bible, because the Hebrew is very old. The Hebrew is archaic. I think it's significant that for a long time we've had male scholars and male clergy primarily interpreting these stories, and yet here we have one of the oldest texts in the scripture telling how Miriam and other women led the celebration of God's deliverance. While the story traditionally refers to Moses, more often than not, it's clear that Miriam is important. She's called a prophet. That title is recognized in this 19th century painting by a German artist. If you look at her face, what do you see? What is painted there? I see a strength of character, calm reflection as she looks at her people who have just been delivered from terror. And she is about to, but we don't quite see it, break into singing and dancing. There's also a passage from the prophet Micah, which is also a very old scripture that lists Miriam as part of the team. Remembering for the people, "I brought you up from the land of Egypt and redeemed you from the house of slavery. I sent Moses before you as well as Aaron and Miriam." When I was searching the internet for images of Miriam and the women leading this celebration, I found the work of a woman named Joy Krauthammer, who is active in the Jewish renewal, feminist, and neo-Hasidic worlds, to make visible the face of the divine, as she writes. And she and I have had a delightful correspondence via email this past week, and I learned of her very personal connection to Miriam. For many years, she leads out on the West Coast worship and special events with timbrel, percussion, and dance. Not only did she give us permission to use her art this morning, but she also reminded me that today is the second day of Rosh Hashanah, the holy period in Jewish celebration, remembering the Exodus story and the giving of the Ten Commandments. And so as part of that, she sent us all a Rosh Hashanah greeting, indicating what this season is: a time for prayer, a time for reflection, a time for teshuvah, which is to turn around from ways that may be destructive to our life and to the life of the world, a time for renewal. And this prayer: may the source of life inscribe you and those you love for a year of abundant divine blessings, Torah, wholeness of mind and body, joy, light, love, spirituality, creativity, harmony, passion, awareness, vision, transformation, and shalom. Do you remember the song, "Go Down Moses," when Israel was in Egypt land? We're going to sing that in just a few minutes. And it's a song that retells that story of the Hebrew escape from Egypt, while inspiring another group of people who 3,000 years later found themselves in a similar situation. African slaves in the United States, immersed in biblical story, theology, and hope, understood themselves to be living that ancient Exodus story from prior years, so long ago, and identified with that yearning for freedom. Some think that the song "Go Down Moses" was written by Harriet Tubman, who was a leader in the Underground Railroad. In the biography of her life and work, she is quoted as saying that she used the song "Go Down Moses" as one of two code songs to guide fugitive enslaved people as a way to communicate with them as they fled. She also got the nickname Moses to speak of her connection to the biblical story. The song, we will sing it, not only tells the story of the miraculous deliverance of the Hebrews from Egyptian slavery, but also the story of deliverance of African slaves out of their bondage and toil in the pre-Civil War era. As she led slaves to freedom, Harriet carried a lantern to light their way. The journey to freedom was a dangerous one, and the lantern served as a symbol of strength and of hope that they would reach their goal. The lantern also served a very practical purpose of being placed in a certain location in a home that was a part of the Underground Railroad. For them, there was no pillar of fire, but a small flame of a lantern, being a dramatic symbol of solidarity and of support. All right, you're ready to sing. The song is in the songbook, or it is also going to be on the screen. And we'll stand to sing, and we also have the inaugural Miriam Tambourine Choir to help lead us this morning. You may be seated. Thank you so much to Deb and Janet for providing that. We'll maybe do that another time. I used to lead that song at high school youth events back in the many years ago, and I thought it was important to introduce the whole spiritual tradition to these kids. Number one, because they were hearing the story that forms the basic foundation of our Jewish and Christian traditions. Number two, it tells the story of African slaves in this country who took inspiration from that story. And third, I thought it important that we recognize the fact of Miriam's leadership in the midst of that. And so I was able to rename the song Go Down Moses as Go Down Miriam in that songbook, Ever Flowing Streams, and to change those verses to give Miriam credit as well as Moses. So you sung it well. The ancient Exodus story tells, as Emily's told the children so long ago, 15 minutes ago, that God would protect them by means of a cloud, and they experienced God's guidance by a fiery pillar. Let the stories of the fiery pillar of the Exodus and the lanterns of the Underground Railroad remind us that there are still people who flee for their lives in this world, displaced by war, political repression, food scarcity, fires or floods, and that this is their story too. Communities of faith founded in these stories are always called to find ways to respond. The Bible regularly says, "Remember when you were a slave in Egypt. Therefore, do something about those who live that story today." I close with a verse from the hymn that we'll sing at the end of the service, written by Reverend Ruth Duck, who also helped co-edit that hymnal. Lead on, O fiery pillar, we follow, yet with fears, but we shall come rejoicing, though joy be born of tears. We are not lost, though wandering, for by your light we come, and we are still God's people. The journey is our home.
We have a few announcements today and a few special guests to speak with us this morning. But first, we're going to invite our moderator, Sarah Sund, up front to introduce our stewardship campaign. You're all very excited. I'm actually very excited about our stewardship campaign today. So thanks.
I do not like speaking up here, so I will do my best to look at you as I do this. This letter is actually written by the entire stewardship campaign with a strong influence of Pastor Zana's magical words. I did not write this myself. It is clear to us that Middleton Community Church has set out on a holy adventure. No, we're not climbing the Rockies or boarding a raft down the Mississippi or even packing the car for a trip to Camp Balsams. It's a much slower journey. This is truly a holy adventure. We're following God with no real knowledge of where we'll end up. It is an adventure that requires patience, attentiveness, and a whole lot of faith. Our stewardship theme this year features the image of a labyrinth and the words, "the next faithful step," our mantra for the year ahead. Labyrinths consist of one long path wrapped around itself. While it might not be apparent on first glance, there is always one way in and one way out. You won't get lost. But to follow the path, you have to focus your attention. You can't take the whole thing at once. Instead, you take one step at a time with the faith that you will end up where God intends you to be. As we set out on this holy adventure that requires patience, attentiveness, and a whole lot of faith, the scripture from Isaiah is a reminder of God's presence in our journey. And when you turn to the right or when you turn to the left, your ears shall hear a word behind you saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Last year, MCC committed to the sacred work of community building for our church, for our neighbors, and for a more just and generous world. We asked all the members to prayerfully consider increasing their pledge by a significant 10 to 12%. The response was overwhelming. We were able to fully fund an aspirational budget that reflected our growth and our hopes for the future. In 2023, we have made a concerted effort to make connections with our new pastor, each other, our neighbors, and the world. We recommitted to an in-person worship while bolstering our live stream capabilities, even though they're not happening today. We nurtured our relationships with Pope Farm Elementary, Forward Garden, and the Elderberry Neighborhood Association, and we strengthened our financial support for our vital mission partners working for a more just and generous world. Our outreach has not gone unnoticed. We've received invitations to continue growing in our relationships with and support of the community, and look forward to sharing many of those with you in the year ahead. This year's budget is built around the call to move consistently forward in the way God is calling MCC. One of the invitations we've already answered is to participate in Awaken Dane. This is a movement of churches awakening to God's call, forming life-giving friendships and partnerships, and growing in love for their neighbors. Our small team of 5 dedicated volunteers are participating in a 2-year cohort with our congregations around Dane County. Together, they are continuing to explore new ways for MCC to reach out to the community. Here are a few of the next faithful steps showing up in our 2024 budget. The Board of Membership and Fellowship is exploring ways to make Fellowship Hall a more comfortable and inviting place. The Board of Finance is hiring a part-time bookkeeper. Our growing church requires increased administration. This position will alleviate some of the workload for our extremely talented and busy office manager so that she can work at the top of her abilities. The Board of Worship has increased our talented music director's hours so that she can continue to cultivate a wide variety of inspiring music on a weekly basis. The Board of Membership and Fellowship has added Neighbor Day to the budget, hoping this successful event will grow in the year to come. In the midst of all this, and given our current financial strength and generous congregation, we are excited and open to hearing God's call, hearing God's still speaking voice saying, "This is the way, walk in it." Knowing that we're on this holy adventure together, we ask that each member of our congregation prayerfully consider increasing their pledge by 5%. If you have not pledged before, this is an opportunity to support ongoing church operations and our next faithful steps on this journey. It is critical that every member submit your pledge, whether they plan to give in person or electronically, so we can accurately plan our budget. Your pledge information will arrive via email today. Or you can head to our website and find the stewardship campaign under the members menu. We hope to receive all pledges in advance of Stewardship Sunday on November 12th. And if we have not received them before November 12th, you will be getting a phone call from someone on the Stewardship Committee. So if you don't want a phone call asking for financial pledge, but would rather us call you for fun, turn it in. We are so very grateful for everyone that gives their time, talent, and financial support. MCC is an amazing, faithful community because of you.
Over the last several weeks, because of our generous and healthy budget, we are able, through the Board of Mission and Stewardship, to give surprising gifts twice a year, where members of the congregation are invited to nominate an organization that means something to them. And the Board of Mission and Stewardship picks 5 or 6 of them and sends them a random gift in the middle of the year that they are not expecting, as a thank you and an encouragement in the work that they're doing. And so we've invited people who have nominated and received gifts this year to come and tell us a little bit about that. So Stephanie, tell us about GSAFE.
Thank you. I actually don't mind speaking in front of people, so get ready. No. The organization that I chose to nominate for a surprising gift this year was GSAFE. GSAFE stands for the Gay Straight Alliance for Safe Schools. Their mission is simple: to create just schools for LGBTQ+ youth in Wisconsin. They will tell you that they are driven by a vision of a world free of oppression based on gender identity and expression, sexual orientation, race, and other identities, and strive to model the world we want to exist through everyday actions. GSAFE has spent over 30 years raising awareness about the treatment of trans and LGBTQ+ youth in and out of schools, giving educators the resources to make their schools safer through policies and tools to use with queer and trans students. Now, if you were here last week and you had the pleasure of hearing Brooke speak about the group that she nominated, her story about choosing MCC is similar to mine and my family's. We had been in the Madison area and drove by this little white church. And I said, Eric, look that up. What is that? And on the website, the very first line said, "We are an open and affirming congregation." Now, I was born and raised Catholic. I have a bishop in my family. We were staunchly Catholic. And growing up, I didn't struggle with things like sexual orientation or gender, but I did struggle. And my church, the Voice of God, was not only the thing that got me through, but saved me in many ways. And so as I became a mom, I wanted that same experience for my children. But I didn't want to take them to church and then come home and say, well, actually, love is love. And actually, things that didn't align with my core beliefs today. And so as a mom, I started to realize that I didn't really think of myself just as Edie and Everly's mom. I kind of took on this new identity of being everyone's mom and really looking out for all of the kids in my circle and in my purview. And, the reason that GSAFE means so much to me is that I don't know who my children will be in the next 5 to 10 years. It doesn't matter. And I also don't know who they'll choose as their friends, as their partners. But I want them to have the same safety in their school that they feel at home and here in this church. And so it was really important to me to continue to support organizations that offer those opportunities to children who may not have that same safety in their home or in their church. In recent times, more legislation targeting our LGBTQ+ youth is being considered and unfortunately passed. According to the Wisconsin Department of Public Instruction and PBS News, the recent anti-trans legislation headlines and horrible treatment of queer and trans students has caused a significant spike in suicide and extreme depression in students around the nation. While addressing the treatment of these students, GSAFE has worked toward making schools a safer place. They hold trainings for educators and parents to become more accepting toward their trans and queer students, peers, and children. GSAFE also made progress toward helping school districts with instating new anti-discriminatory policies, and as recent as June, they brought quite a bit of attention toward legislation that helped Dane County achieve the first nationwide safe sanctuary for people who are transgender and non-binary to shield them from any future laws that remove their rights. In a very recent interview, GSAFE was asked what message they want to spread to the Madison community, and they said their organization just wants people to know that kids are loved and valued and cared about. So thank you all for the opportunity to bring attention to their work and for MCC in supporting their efforts.
You all are wonderful. So a couple things happening after worship today. As always, we'll have fellowship after worship, and we had lots of people sign up over the last several months, and now the schedule is empty. So if you would like to host fellowship over the next few weeks, we invite you to find the sign-up sheet over on the table where you find the treats. And today, Matt and I are hosting fellowship, and he's working in the nursery, and I'm here, so you might have to wait a minute for us to pull everything out. Just your heads up. But it's that easy to do that we can pull all that off at once. And then Adult Sunday School will meet today beginning at 10:45 down in the gathering room. And we're starting with a series of many of our mission partners who are coming to talk to us about the work that they do and the work that they invite us into. And so we have a guest today from Solace Friends who received one of our special offerings earlier, I think the Easter offering this year. So I'd like to invite them up to give you a little taste of what they do and invite you to Adult Sunday School today.
Hi there. Does that work? Am I close enough? Okay. I'm Anne. Thank you so much for your prior support. This is Laura Rose. I'm Ann Catlett, and we're here from Solace Friends. And to introduce what we're going to be talking about, I'm just going to ask you to do a little thought experiment with me just for a moment. So just imagine that you know that you are nearing the end of your life and that you don't have any more medical treatments, and you're going to need to get the support and care of both a hospice agency, but also family and friends. But you have no place to go. You don't have a home. You don't have caregiving support. So that is what some of us started imagining over 5 years ago. And we decided that those people who fall through the cracks needed some hope. They needed a place to be. So Solace Friends was developed in order to fill that gap in services. We are creating a home in Madison on the east side to provide 4 bedrooms for people who otherwise would have no other place to go to receive their end-of-life care. We are well on our way. We plan to open this fall, and we're real excited to tell you about our holy adventure that we are on. So come to the adult, what is it called? Sunday School. Okay. And we'll tell you more about it. Thanks.
And finally, a continued thank you to everybody who supports MCC financially. You can give offerings today on your way out the doors. If you turn around once you get out the sanctuary doors, there are boxes on the walls to leave envelopes or offering, or you can go online to our website, middletonucc.org, and find the yellow donate button in the menu.